Welcome to Introduction to Python. So a bit about this class before we start. This is a class that will cover the basics of Python within the course of 4 weeks. Today we'll be talking about variables and their types. Next week we'll move on to float control, which is basically a fancy way of describing if statements. And then for week 3 we'll move on to loops. Finally we'll end with turtle graphics, which is another part of Python that allows you to draw really cool things. So let's get started. What is Python? Well, let's look at the dictionary definition. A large, heavy-bodied, non-venomous constrictor snake occurring throughout the Old World tropics. I don't think that's what we're using. Let's look at the second definition. A high-level general-purpose programming language. That's more like it. Python is a programming language good for lots of different reasons. It's available for all ages, so it's good to learn as a beginner because even if you end up going on to more advanced programming, Python can still be used. It's useful in lots of different fields, and it's also fun and great to learn with. If you're learning programming because you want to become a programmer, or just for fun, Python is also one of the most used in top companies, so that's really useful for a first language. In this class, you can access Python on any software you have, from PyCharm to Trinket. But if you don't have any ideas of what to go on now, we recommend using starcoder.org's playground for writing. Let's get started with your first program. Open up your Python platform. So in Python, you type on one side and all of your code and all of your programming goes there. On the other side, everything you want to display comes out. To display things, you print them out like a printer. For this example, let's print out Hello World. Just like in this GIF or GIF, type out the words to get the output. Did it work? Make sure to click Run. So that was the first command of every Python tutorial. Now that you're hopefully somewhat familiar with the environment, let's move on to the actual lesson for today. Variables. What is a variable? Variables are one of the fundamental basics of Python. A variable is defined as a named container which holds a value. Imagine you have a bag containing a single item. That's what a variable is. But unlike in real life, we can't put a pencil or a ball into an online variable. Instead, we put in different types of items, things called ints, floats, strings, and bool. These will all be explained today, but first let's look at how to name our variables. There are a couple rules involved in naming variables to make sure that they're valid. First, it has to start with the letter or underscore. It can contain numbers, but it can't start with one. Symbols like hashtags or dollar signs can't be used in variable names, only alphanumeric characters. In addition, they're case sensitive. All of these examples are different. On the right side hand here, we can see that the examples of legal and illegal variable names are displayed. Keep these in mind while writing. Another important thing is that on most Python running applications, if a keyword appears in a different color, or if you type a space and your variable appears to be a different color, there's a chance that the word actually means something else in Python, so it can't be used. Make sure to avoid words like for and from for this purpose. Now what goes into a variable? The first thing is integers. Integers are any whole numbers, also known as counting numbers, zero, and negative numbers. Just like in math, Python contains lots of different operations: addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. However, one important thing to note is that sometimes in division, the result isn't always whole. To make sure you get the whole number result, use double slashes instead of a single slash. A single slash results in a thing called a float. What's a float? A float is another item that can be displayed in a variable. Floats are any decimal numbers, from positive to negative. Floats have two main different representations. The decimal way, standard, where basically you type something like 3.14 or 23.0, and also the scientific representation. In scientific notation, we have x times 10 to the power of 2. but in Python and Python only, we can display 10 to the power of 2 as e2. So to create a float, we can, as shown in the example here, we can write x equals 2.3 times e2. 2.3e2 displays 230.0. Similarly, 23.0 also displays the same thing. Now this relates to integers because when you simply slash two variables, you can divide them, but you will receive the float version. That's why we have the double slash, to make sure that we get the integer version. But variables don't just contain numbers. Strings are words. Just like we mentioned in our example, variables can't contain actual balls or pencils, but they can contain the word ball or the word pencil. Strings let us do that. Strings are a sequence of characters surrounded by quotation marks. As long as they're put inside the quotation marks, anything can be put, from alphabet to the numbers to special characters. One thing to note is both double quotes and single quotes work. However, make sure that if you pick double quotes, you use double quotes because using double quotes in front and single quotes later is invalid. One thing we can do with strings is concatenation. Using a simple plus sign, we can add the two strings together. Let's look at this example. We have string 1 as hello and string 2 as world. If we print out string 1 plus a space plus string 2, we get hello space world. Strings are really cool because they also have lots of other operations. One main thing to note is indexing. The idea of indexing is taking apart the string and chopping it into single characters. Every character can be denoted as an item. The index assigned to the item starts at 0. So if we have the word hello as shown on the right-hand side, the first character, H, would be given the index 0. Then the next E would be given the index 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, and so on. Indexing is really useful if we want to find a certain letter or character at the index position. For example, if I wanted to know what was in this string, hello's, second position, then I would search up string bracket 1 bracket because they start at 0. Looking on the right-hand side, this is equal to the letter E. Another important thing to know is we can find the length of a string using an operation called len. Len bracket, no, that's not bracket. Len and then string name helps us find the length of the string. Since indexing starts at 0, the final index is equal to lang string minus 1. An important thing to note is that spaces do count as characters. Another important thing we can do with strings is called slicing. The idea of string slicing is cutting up a string into different pieces and taking one portion. This single portion is known as a substring. So in order to get a slice of a string, we use the starting index, bracket, colon, ending index, plus 1. Let's look at the example. If I wanted to take the letters E and L from hello, then I would know that their indexes are index 1 and 2. So I would put the string name, bracket, 1, and then colon, and then the index of L plus 1, which is 2 plus 1, which is 3. So it would be bracket 1, colon, 3, end bracket. This gives us EL. Now the final value we can put inside variables is called Boolean. Boolean is interesting because you can only have two different types, true or false. Boolean has these things called operators. There are three main ones to know. Let's use the example of peanut butter and jelly. The operator of AND takes results with only both peanut butter and jelly. The operation of OR takes anything with either peanut butter, jelly, or both. And finally, NOT gives anything that does not include the value. So if I said not jelly, then it would take the peanut butter part without jelly. Boolean operators work with Boolean, and there are a couple things to quickly memorize. True and false returns false, and true or false returns true. An easy way to remember this is that if I have a truth and a lie, then I tell a lie, because essentially if a lie is part of a truth and a lie, it is still a lie. However, if I was to choose between a truth or a lie, then I would pick the truth. The easiest way to remember not is to remember that anything that is not this event is true. Now let's look at some examples and problems from this lesson. Is 123 cat a valid variable name? Feel free to pause the video to think about these questions and answer them. 123 cat is not a valid variable name. Though numbers are allowed in variable names, 123 cat starts with a number, therefore making it invalid. What about num $1? It has a number, but it doesn't start with the number. Since variable names can only start and have alphanumeric numbers and letters, we can see that the $sign makes it so that this is indeed not a valid variable name. What about this code? What does it print out? The answer to this is it prints out simply the letter T. Since the string intro to Python can be indexed, we can see that index 0 has the character of I, uppercase, then index 1 has N. Index 2 would have T, on and on till the end of intro. Then at index 4, we have the O. At index 5, we reach the space, which does count as an index. So therefore, our sixth index is the letter T in 2. What about this code? What does it print out? If you recall, we mentioned in Boolean, we can see that true and false returns false, because again, if I tell a lie and I tell a bit of truth, then it is still a lie. True or false, for the second option, returns true. However, since there is a not in front, we pick not true or false. Since true or false is true, not true is equal to false. Therefore, this prints out false, false. A bonus question, because it's not typically used, is what does the E stand for in floats? The answer to this is that the E stands for scientific notation. It's 10 to the power of x. An example is 2e2 is equal to 200 because it's 2 times 10 to the power of 2. 3e1 is equal to 3 times 10 to the power of 1, which is 30. Thank you for listening for today's lesson.